Well, hey, podcast listeners, and welcome to episode 44 of the Pixar Post Podcast. As usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And in this episode, we're going to dedicate it 100% to Toy Story That Time Forgot. We're going to dig into the Blu-ray and talk about our thoughts on it, some of the special features, and then we're also, our big feature of this podcast is we had an interview with director Steve Purcell.
The cleric himself.
Absolutely. And you'll see as you listen to the interview with him, he does the voice for us on there real quick too, which is awesome.
We were so excited.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the Blu-ray itself. So
Yes.
The first thing out of the gate that was super exciting when we got it was we had been watching the DVR broadcast of this for months on end.
Well, almost a year.
Exactly. And it's never the same if it's over a satellite feed coming through and you're recording it, it's over ABC and all those kind of things. It was fantastic seeing it in 100% high definition, 1080p. So we immediately just watched it straight through by itself just to dig in and soak that part in first.
Yes, the crystal clear, the details is phenomenal.
Yeah, and we'll definitely be talking about some of the Easter eggs, and Steve Purcell reveals even a few more that haven't been talked about ever.
I know, it's so exciting.
So that's
I
really
love all
cool.
that stuff.
But certainly in our podcast show notes, and of course, if you need to access them at any time, just go to pixarpost.com, click on the podcast button, and this is episode 44 again, and all the show notes will be in there. But we have a post that we had started before when it had aired that we kind of broke down all of the Easter eggs, but we're going to update those with new screenshots too, so it'll be higher resolution, and then we'll have some additional ones that Steve is going to talk about. So it's really great. So let's dig into some of the special features, though, of the Blu-ray. So it starts out, the first one in the special features menu and the bonus features is called Reptilus. It's about 11 minutes that talks about the design, the animation, the vocal work, and I know you liked kind of how they created those little sub-stories.
Yeah, the backstories of the Battlesaurs, including Reptilus and how he had a twin brother at one point.
Right, it was super cool. They show him like in an animatic form, which is like a edited storyboards that they put together in motion, and they show him cracking out from his egg and getting born and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it was the enthusiasm of Derek Thompson, who was totally geeking out over all of like the backstory. Like we were just saying, I love that.
Yeah, so he was a story supervisor on the project, and he went through and created these whole worlds, and he's talking about them and going into it in such detail, and he's like, it's really stupid, and he just laughs that he knows all of this detail about this world that that the team has kind of put together and everything. The other thing you'll notice when you watch Reptilus, and obviously we're not going to give everything away in our talk here, because we obviously want you to see it and experience it yourself. But the other thing to definitely look for when you watch it on the Blu-ray is this amazing artwork that's in the background of all of these interviews. So you've got Steve Purcell there, you've got Derek Thompson. They're interviewing different folks, and
there's amazing portraits.
Yeah, it's like a full-on like oil painting portrait of Reptilus and
Trixie. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We were drooling. We were like, oh, I wish like they would zoom in close like that so we could like just get a screenshot of it. They were amazing.
Yeah, they're super cool. And then throughout it as well, you start to see some of the other in the art department. Like there's Reptilus on a Wheaties box.
Yeah.
And there's a whole Battlesaurs Empire Strikes Back inspired poster that they made in the background. Really cool to see all that background stuff. I mean, that alone is worth picking it up. Because you're getting more of those insights as far as the fun things that they do to develop this, develop the projects. We
love seeing that background, stuff.
Of course. Well, we wouldn't have a site if we didn't.
Yeah.
One of the other things we noticed right after we watched Reptilus is of course, an Easter egg on the DVD, which is a little hidden item that you have to press the remote buttons in different directions and try to find a secret.
Which you're obsessed with. You love doing that.
Yeah.
Every time that we would go to like a next chapter, he's like, wait a second. And you're pushing all these buttons. I'm like, okay, 5 minutes later, he's still trying to find something.
Right, so on the Reptilus special feature, if you press the right button 2 times, all of a sudden in the DVD menu off to the right-hand side is where you can see the skull that Reptilus lives in the shape of his head. But when you press right on the Reptilus special feature twice, the eye of the skull lights up.
Yes, it turns red.
Then press enter, and you'll get a little toolkit Battle Source Toolkit animation, and it's about 45 seconds long. It's just Rex and Buzz running from the Battle Source around. So it's a really fun, just a little
with
extra
kind of
bonus.
some concept art in the background.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the next special feature in line is the San Diego Comic-Con. So the crew had gone to San Diego Comic-Con from Toy Story That Time Forgotten. They had Kristen Shaw there voicing Trixie. They had a whole bunch of folks there. And we have an article wrap up, and we even did a live Google Hangout after they had that event, kind of talking about some of the reactions that people were putting out there. They were signing posters and all that kind of stuff. We were, of course, hoping, that it would be the full San Diego Comic-Con presentation that they put forth, but it was a summary of it, so it was like 3 minutes and 30 seconds. They talked about that it was originally, the special was originally called Battle Sores, and then they went through clips of the event as well as kind of the history of the event for other artists. So they talked about like Derek Thompson and Steve Purcell had been many times before, and even early on in the 80s, those kind of things. So that was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Next special feature up, there's a karaoke special with a song called My Unexpected Friend, and you can play it two different ways. One of them is with Reptilis, or Kevin McKidd, who voices him singing the song, and then there's a second version where it's just the karaoke version, and you can sing along to it yourself. Yeah, they have the bouncing words and all that kind of stuff. The
song will get stuck in your head.
Right, it's a ballady, cheesy love song-ish from like the 80s, early 90s kind of feel. It even has like a pseudo-esque Phil Collins style drum fill where you get the do-do-do-do-do. So that's kind of cool. The next special feature is...
Well, what's interesting about the song, before we move on, is we didn't know that Alex Mandel wrote the song with Steve Purcell. And you may remember that Alex Mandel did music on Brave, and Brave is my favorite Pixar film.
There you go, exactly. So, of course, it comes back to somehow or another he's Alex. Okay, so here's the 6 degrees of Mark Andrews in you. So Alex Mandel wrote this song, My Unexpected Friend, with Steve Purcell. He also wrote Into the Air with Mark Andrews. So it all comes back around, of course.
It all comes back to Brave.
Yeah. And then Alex Mandel has also done other music for other features as well. He did some special feature work for Ratatouille, and then also on The Incredibles Blu-ray or DVD as a little extra there. So that was kind of cool too. The next special feature that was on there was a 2D animated Battle Sores alternate intro, which was really cool. It was produced by an outside company, and they went through. It's almost like a kind of Dragon Ball Z, kind of definitely Japanese animation inspired for sure. In fact, the company that did it is based out of Japan. And it's, I hate to say it this way, but it's like delightfully cheesy. It's what you want when you're thinking of Battle Sores.
It's what I remember Saturday morning cartoons being, the intro.
Absolutely.
Back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The next special feature is some deleted scenes. We've got a Battle Sores Christmas one, which is about 3 minutes long. There's Prisoners of Bone, 1 minute and 23 seconds. SOS, 1 minute and 9. Trixie's Proposal, 2 minutes. Light of Play, 2 minutes again. And then there is, when you punch in the Disney Magic code into Disney Movies Anywhere, it'll unlock another one called Battleopolis, which is 3.5 minutes. And all of these special features, the deleted scenes are animatics again, so it's the animated storyboard drawings. So that was a nice little surprise to get after you punch in the code, and you can get that extra one. And obviously one of the big highlights of any Blu-ray for big Pixar fans is the commentary track. And
it's what we look forward to almost the most, besides the behind the scenes.
Yep, absolutely. And again, on this one, it's going to be Steve Purcell, the director of it, as well as Derek Thompson, the head of story. And they go through many, many things. We're not going to go into the commentary itself because some of the questions and some of the little features that he talks about, we talk about in the interview with him. But there was one that I wanted to call out just before we get into it too, which was the Angel Kitty trumpet where he's playing it. Mm-hmm. That part. It was they said it's a total late addition into the process. I thought that was a nice little fun fact that they didn't even think about it. All of a sudden they just were like, okay, we got to throw this in here and make it work somehow.
Right.
I thought that was kind of cool. All right, so that's kind of the Blu-ray, but what were your initial thoughts when we were finally able to take it all in?
I love it. First off, this is one of my favorite Pixar specials. I want more battle sores.
Oh, without a doubt.
I want another special. I want, a 6-minute short.
Oh, yeah,
a
everything.
6-minute battle sore tune.
Everything.
I love it.
Yeah, I want more Reptilis for sure. I want more. What's ignorance?
I know.
I want more of the
Cleric.
humor of all. Oh, don't even get me started. I want more Cleric. Of course, I talked to Steve that's my favorite character from this.
Rhaegon. All of them.
Bring me the Supplicator. Yes, a Supplicator. Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. It's so much fun. I love the world of it. I know that other people have said that they. Everybody has their opinions. They liked Toy Story of Terror a little better. This is the one that we happened to connect to a little bit more.
Yes.
And for anybody that's kind of listened to us, we've talked about it before. We did for our son's birthday. We did a Toy Story That Time Forgot theme. We've watched this special. How many times have you seen it?
I probably watch it 4 times a week.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So
still.
Yeah, and it's even better now that it's in high def.
Yes.
It just makes it a little more exciting again. All right, so let's get down to it, though. Let's get to what we really want to talk about in the interview with Steve Purcell. So before we do jump straight into it, though, we want to talk about, there's a couple things to keep your ears out for. Obviously, like we mentioned at the top of the show, he reveals a couple more Easter eggs, which are always fun things to look for in there. He does do the voice of the cleric on here, so he does a quick little snippet where he'll give us a sampling of it. And then he answers one of the questions in one of the areas that I've had on my mind since we watched it the very first time, which is about the glowing chest piece, and does it have a significance to Reptilis? Was it originally a bigger part of the story, or was it, what was it? What was it for? So It's really exciting to hear those things. So let's dig right into the interview, and then we'll chat some more on the backside. All right, so one of the things that struck us right off the bat when watching the extras, because we did get an early copy of it, so that's awesome, of watching the extras for the Blu-ray, is how much fun the team seemed to be having when developing the characters, the world that the characters are in, as well as the story itself. So I guess just talk a bit about that process of the development of it, and also, was it as fun as it looked?
Yeah, it was as fun as it looked, and what was fun about working on this show is it sort of answered this, all my kind of nerdy, interests from growing up and, working in entertainment and stuff, like all the sci-fi movies and the toys. I'm a toy collector, so I love character-based toys, and all those kind of influences coming together in one project was a lot of fun. So, and the crew they were having that fun too, because we were creating an entire toy line from scratch as if this was a real thing, because John Lasseter wants a toy line in the Toy Story world to look like it's totally authentic, and so it made us have to go the extra mile to think it through and all the reasons for all these characters existing. And besides that, then we have all the influences to the sci-fi movies that we all grew up on, and how to express the kind of camera work and the kind of lighting that happens in those kind of shows, and the types of characters you bump into. So there was a lot of things that were firing us up as we worked on this project.
Yeah, I could only imagine. It does. It seemed so much fun, and that's one of the reasons we really connected to it too, is just because of our history growing up in that awesome era of just, toys and the power of them, and then the shows that corresponded with it. It was just great seeing that translate into this particular project as well.
Yeah, the process of creating a toy line that you would have wanted to have when you were a kid was really satisfying.
Yeah.
Hey, we still want this toy line.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's one of the things that we get a lot, because we did a review of the Thinkway Buzz and Woody characters, and the bigger series. And one of the ones that we get all the time, because it's a pretty popular video we did on YouTube, is I want the full-size Reptilis.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to have a singing Reptilis in my hand. A big handful of Reptilis would be great. And I'd also love to see Thinkway did a great Mr. Pricklepants, a little stuffed version of him, and I'd love to see Angel Kitty done to that level. It would be so cool to have an Angel Kitty with all her phrases. And we actually recorded quite a few more phrases for her that we never used for the show. She ended up with about 5 or 6 lines in the show, but there were actually many, many more Christmas affirmations that we didn't get a chance to use for anything.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I remember on the extras you talk about that you guys were very disciplined in keeping her lines minimal to, I guess, was it to increase the impact of those lines?
Well, it's a kind of a character because there's a repetition to what she's doing, so you don't want to play it so many times that you're rolling your eyes by the last times. You sort of want each time to have some impact of its own. So we were trying to manage her very well so that we wouldn't overuse her or underuse her. We just wanted her to be this little voice of Christmas that showed up just when we needed her.
Yeah, and it worked. Obviously, you know, it was a completely beloved character, and even if it wasn't a Thinkway toy done to that quality, people loved the fact that they could go pick that up in the store.
That's fun.
Yeah. So, also on the extras, one of the things we were really excited to see was about some of the vocal work. And there was that moment where you had Kristen Schaal and Kevin McKidd working together. And going through some of the lines, and there was one particular line that was not included in the final version, but we saw it where Kristen Schaal is talking as Trixie to Reptilus. It's when she's gushing about living in his, he had the home shaped like his head, and she says, "Well, where do you sleep? In the nostril or the eye socket?"
Right.
And holy cow, that was we cracked up when we watched that last night.
Oh yeah.
So
there's even more.
Was that an ad-lib line, or was that originally part of the script?
That part wasn't. The line that's in the script is about, everybody needs an apartment shaped like their own head, and she just ran amok with that line and just had fun with it. And she actually went much further than that, which we don't have on the disc, but it's funny because she was just making him blush. They were almost their personalities of their characters, in that moment when they were just riffing back and forth, as if they're on that date themselves. It was pretty funny, but it's also great because it's so rare to get the actors together. It's pretty uncommon doing animation to get the actors in the room together. So in this case, it helped us a lot because they had to have this chemistry in the show, and it helped inform the way they were animated and the way, the choices we made, in the show.
Yeah. Absolutely. And how'd you guys land on Kevin McKidd? Was it your familiarity with him because of the work on Brave?
Yeah, well, I was thinking of I was kind of thinking of different kinds of stoic characters or characters you might have, kind of recognized from one of those sci-fi pieces where you sort of meet the stoic, maybe he's a little bit different from the rest of the tribe kind of character. And I had some different ideas tossing around in my head, and then at some point I went, oh my God, Kevin McKidd, because I'm a huge fan of the Rome miniseries, and I watched it a couple of times, and he was so great in that because he had this range where he was the Centaurian, but he was also in over his head as this political figure as well, and but when it came time to do Reptilus, it was great because I was sort of looking for some version of that, but he knew how to play Reptilus where he had a little bit of Errol Flynn in him too. He would overstate the lines just a little bit, so it felt like he was selling it a little, and gave it this kind of colorful character, aspect to it. Like, he's the kind of guy that, knows everyone's looking at him, and he's making an impression whether he wants to or not. So he knew what to do with that.
Yeah. Well, and as we talk about Reptilus, you can't bring up Reptilus without also thinking about his commander, the Cleric.
Oh, of course.
Yes. So the Cleric, obviously, we know you voiced. I was hoping you would do one of those.
Of course I did.
Well, the development of everything about this character. This is my personal favorite character in the short. We love everything about him, from his eyes being that awesome yellow character and the amazing eyebrows that he has, how much they can really move around and create those expressions. Mm-hmm. So how did he come into the story, and how did he get his mechanical arm, if you know?
Well, we always knew we wanted this foil. We wanted one guy in the story that knew what was going on. He was the guy that knew they were all toys, but in his mind, as long as these characters don't realize they're toys and that there's a kid somewhere to play with them, he gets to rule this play. So as long as the kid stays in the other room playing with the video game, he gets to be the leader of this place. As soon as a kid plays with them all, then they're all equals, and the cleric loses all his power. So he wants this to go on for a long time. But it was fun to think of him because he's sort of a compilation of a lot of my favorite villains from the movies, like Dr. Zaius and Emperor Palpatine, and he's got some, Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life in him as well. So it's fun to kind of look for a version of the uber villain that be, that's also fun to play as well. I would always joke whenever he's cackling that's the most fun he ever has. Things are going very badly for someone, and he gets to cackle wildly. So. I think the mechanical arm came out of our art process, where we're looking at different versions, and it might have been John Lasseter actually that said maybe you should have a mechanical arm, because he was liking a lot of the designs that our artists were doing, and he was always riffing on ideas that would make them look more funny, or he was always hoping the weapons could have some goofy aspect to them. So it was him a lot of the time pushing the silliness of the toy line. So I think that was one of John's notes on the cleric for the robot arm.
That's fantastic. With the cleric too, one of the other things that I personally loved throughout the whole short, the whole special, was about the shallow depth of field that was used. And the particular shot that I always think of that first comes to my mind is when the cleric gives the orders to Reptilis to go get Trixie.
Right.
I love the fact that it's below kind of the eye line of Reptilis. It shoots straight up to the cleric, but I love that it stays out of focus on Reptilis the entire time.
Yeah.
I just thought that was so clever to not pull to his focus real quick and then shoot back to the cleric.
Yeah, I mean, because he was big in frame, it allowed us to still see what he was thinking about. So and the challenge of that shot is to let us know what his opinion of that order is, and you can see a little bit of regret on his face. He doesn't want to have to do that, but he's gonna do it anyway because he's doing his job. And so it was fun to kind of look for what the things that we were influenced by and try to get that camera work and that dynamic, those dynamic shots that kind of remind us of those movies that we're referencing as we're in this world.
So in that battle scene where you've got Sock Ape coming in and all those types of things, all the other characters, how did you guys determine how far to take that battle scene, especially because when Sock Ape he gets tossed over the edge, he gets tore up. It seemed that's a pretty intense moment. But how far did you know to take it without getting too far?
It's a little surprising when that happens because you don't expect this to happen to the toys. But there was this effort on our parts to make it feel like it was dangerous enough for Woody and Buzz because they're pretty big toys. If you look at the versions of them that you buy in the store, they're pretty good-sized toys. And we didn't want it to ever feel like these guys could just walk out of this place or push their way out. And so the challenge, putting them in the Battle Swords world was making it feel like they were in real jeopardy. So in those little moments that are kind of intense, it was to just make sure that we felt like the consequences were threatening enough for them, and that there is a chance, especially since Woody's like a soft toy, and we see a soft toy go over the side, and those little dinosaurs can do some damage to it. So we wanted it to feel that dire threat in there, and that's about as intense as it ever gets in there.
Yep.
But for every time there was some intense moment, we tried to have a laugh that would be nearby so it wouldn't be too overwhelming. We wanted to have a balance of both, so either a character reacts in a silly way or there's some other kind of note in there that kind of tries to balance it out a little bit. But it's mainly you just want to make it feel like the consequences are real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that it's the balance of it pushed it. It pushed it right to that edge because I remember when it happened, when we watched it on the premiere night, I looked at Julie and I was like, holy cow.
Like, uh-oh.
But the whole time we always talked about, like, we have to see every one of these guys at the end sort of either put back together or in a way that they're getting to be played with by Bonnie, so that you know there's nobody left behind. There's always, you know, some tip of the hat to every character that had been threatened earlier in the show. So we get to see Sock-Ape, you know, happily napping with the little dinosaur guys, wearing the robot arms from Rex.
I think you and Julie had talked about this a little bit, but talk about the glowing logo on their chest. Was there any purpose to that?
Well, we knew we were getting to that moment at the end where Reptilus was going to express his feelings for Trixie, and that we needed to see that glowing light from far away, and that felt like a perfectly believable play feature that, you know, if you were playing with a battle toy, you might press the chess piece and a little light would come on and make a sound.
Yeah.
So it felt like, because we knew we had that coming, that we should establish it somewhere during the show, so that you know that that's something that he has. It doesn't just come out of the blue later when he does it. So we had a moment in the battle where Buzz pokes at it and it activates the chess piece, and it makes Reptilus mad because, you know, if this was his play feature and that was showing that he was, you know, losing the battle, he wouldn't like that. So it was kind of for two purposes: to show that Buzz is a pretty good fighter against Reptilus, and also to establish that little play feature so that when we see it at the end of the show, we're not surprised by it.
Okay. All right. That helps satisfy me a lot, because that was one of the things that I was just, from the very beginning, I loved that it had that glow feature, and wanted to know the background on that. So that's fantastic. Obviously, you and Julie had also talked real quick about some of the Easter eggs that are in the background.
Sure.
And she talked about the posters that were in the background of Mason's room when they're playing the video games.
Yeah.
And how those were kind of a nod to some upcoming films.
Yeah, when we're thinking of set dressing and things like that, a lot of the time we'll look for something to make it significant to us, even if we don't think the audience will catch on to it. And in the case of the posters behind Mason's chair, we were thinking, well, what should these be? And we were thinking of these kind of stylized movie posters that are homages to the upcoming movies that Pixar was doing. So one of them is cars, and there's a stylized, like a lug nut and a road in it, and then one of them is for Coco, which has a theme of the Day of the Dead, and then the third one is a really super stylized version of the unicorn's mane from Inside Out. So I did read some articles about, you know, finding some of the Easter eggs, and nobody had found those up until, you know, up in the most recent time I checked, nobody had seen those.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, because we have a list that's kind of compiled, and some of our users have been posting out there in our forum too.
There was another one I don't know if I mentioned to her, and it's if you look on the boxes when Reptilus goes in amongst the Battlesaurus toy packages, you'll see that the kids on those boxes are actually Riley's classmates from Inside Out.
Okay,
That's a cool one.
Did not notice that. Because that one has not been brought up yet. I mean, obviously there's the standards as far as the Pixar ball and the Nemo box and all those kind of things.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, we're trying to be really efficient and make use of things that were in play already, and just, you know, we create so many assets in the company. It's fun to be able to find a place for assets that, you know, in a different show from where they were designed.
Absolutely.
We also like that the Mason's Lego table is based on your son's Lego table.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't have as many toys as Mason does, but he does have we put our old kitchen table in his room, and so he built a Lego city on his kitchen table, and it changes out from, you know, week to week. He's always changing the buildings in there and doing these custom buildings in his little town, doing swimming pools and fountains, and he's got the Ghostbusters car parked there and all this stuff that's always in flux.
Oh, speaking of Ghostbusters, it's kind of off topic, but did you see Lego.com? They're releasing
with the Ghostbusters, the fire station, right?
Yeah, January 1st. I just saw it today.
That's pretty cool.
I'm a Lego geek, so.
We have some of those here, as you know.
Yeah. She freaks out wanting to talk to Angus quite often about his Lego collection.
Yeah, that anger is amazing.
So as far as the soundtrack, that was something that on Toy Story of Terror, there was a soundtrack release of Michael Giacchino's score for that.
Yeah.
Was there any discussion as far as a soundtrack release for this?
Actually, I'm not sure. I would love if that happened. I think that does happen. I think they get released on iTunes, but I can't tell you for sure. I think our marketing people should be able to tell you if that's the case. I would love to download that soundtrack and listen to it in my car. I think Michael Giacchino did an amazing job, and you probably already know the story of the original battle horns from Planet of the Apes.
Let the battle begin.
That was a very awesome thing that was cool to carry through.
So yeah, there was one. Well, we knew we liked that tone of one of those kind of war horns because it's definitely a throwback to the late '60s. But he actually owns the horns from the original Planet of the Apes because his percussionist still works for him in his orchestra, and so the percussionist made a gift of those horns to him. So one day, Michael Giacchino and I are standing on the stage in front of the orchestra, and we're taking turns doing the Planet of the Apes war horn sound for the show.
That's phenomenal. Awesome. I mean, just awesome that you can pay that, like you said, that like across the whole board, the homage to those types of films and projects like that. And
seeing those horns, it made the hair stand up on my arms to be in the presence of that horn that made that sound from the old movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was wonderful to chat with you. It's even more wonderful to finally see this on Blu-ray, to get we've been watching it recorded on our DVR for so long.
Yes.
That's great.
And as you know, how many times, with the birthday
once
party.
A day.
Yeah, with the birthday party we did for our son, and we watched it and it was like watching it again for the first time. But all over again because of how great and how crisp the footage is, finally seeing it out there. So we're very excited that it's going to be released to the public, and we certainly believe that people are going to love to be able to hear this interview and pick up a copy for themselves.
Great. It's great talking to you guys.
Farewell, Trixie of the Bonyi tribe. My heart will burn bright at the moment of your return. Tuesday, around 3:30.
All right, there you go. The interview with Steve Purcell. Certainly thank you to Pixar and for Steve for taking the time. That was a fantastic blast for us. Obviously, you got to talk to him when you were at the studio for The Good Dinosaur.
Right, and I had asked him a couple questions that you had kind of asked him too. So I know you were really excited to talk to him, so I kind of stayed quiet so you could have a chance.
Absolutely. Obviously, we've talked about it enough now. We've geeked out about this special enough that it meant a lot.
Yes, it really did.
To be able to do that. So a couple things that I want to talk about coming out of there that were really cool for me is talking about how amazing it was to hear what the cleric was made of, that he was kind of like this conglomeration of his favorite villains over time. I thought it was really cool to hear that list. And one of the other big things was about how many times, because we asked about the cleric's mechanical arm, and he said, I believe that was a John Lasseter note that he said, maybe we should, keep punching it up and give him that mechanical arm kind of thing. And it blows my mind. We've done a lot of Pixar interviews at this point.
Yes.
I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but I know that there are at least 3 to 4 interviews that we have done where they've said specifically something that we've called out or asked on. They said, oh, that's a John Lasseter note, and blah, blah, blah. And it just is crazy. In fact, I know it was lava. There was one on Partysaurus Rex.
It was the bubbles, the dry bubble.
It was the dried water droplets on drips. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the downspout. I definitely know in lava there was one that I talked about when I was talking with Jim Murphy. I mean, it's just the amount of times that you hear those little teeny snippets that's like, oh, well, that was a John note.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking the same thing when we were talking with Steve. I was like, oh my gosh, it's another one. Like, we've said something. It's like, oh, that was a John Lasseter note.
Yeah. And a fun thing is you got to have a little Lego geek out moment about the Ghostbusters and talking about Legos with Steve.
Oh my gosh. Fellow Lego fan.
I like how he says, yeah, we've got plenty of those here. And then I was obviously super thrilled to talk about the posters. You had talked about that with him at the studio, that there was the Cars 3 one that was the stylized lug nut and a road, and Coco had kind of like some of the flowery designs that were part of that. The one that, I mean, there's no way anybody could have got, unless they're a genius, at least I don't think, is the stylized rainbow unicorn mane, the hair of that. I mean, that is... But
once you see it... and once
you can get it, absolutely. Yeah. But that's what makes it an awesome one, because it's such a deep cut.
Think about how many of those deep cuts are in all of these films.
I know, there's stuff that absolutely is not even scratched the surface of.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool. And then obviously one that he talked about that you didn't know either, and he said he doesn't know anybody else that's necessarily found it, is that there are the classmates that are on the boxes.
Yes.
The Battlestar boxes, which are Riley's classmates, which are actually the two classmates that, as she's describing after she moves to Minnesota, that are right over her right and left shoulder.
Right.
So, and of course, if you want to view any of these screenshots, you can just head to our website, and we've got screenshots of the posters as well as Riley's classmates for you guys to check out and get a look at for yourself.
Yeah. Love that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's absolutely just genius.
Yes.
Just genius stuff.
It's just fun.
It's absolutely
for
fun.
fans.
Yeah, and like he said, it's fun to throw in these extra assets that they've seen over time. I mean, like I said, we're going to update the Easter egg post, but we've seen everything from For the Birds references, Knick Knack, La Luna, the Pixar ball, Finding Nemo reference. The list just continues to grow. There's Cars. There's
everything, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Mr. Jones.
Right. It's great to see those and see how they keep growing in the lists. All right, well, I think that wraps up our chat regarding Toy Story That Time Forgot and the Blu-ray, as well as our interview with Steve. What do you think?
I think so.
Fantastic. So if you liked today's episode, let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Toy Story That Time Forgot. If you got the Blu-ray, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the commentary and the special features. And then, of course, just overall about the podcast. If you like it, rate us on iTunes, leave a comment on our site, or send us an email, info@Pixar Post. We'd love to hear it. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, Pinterest, Tumblr, YouTube, Google+, and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Overcast, or Stitcher. Signing off as usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And be sure to stay tuned to PixarPost.com all week for the latest Pixar news. Bye-bye.